Welcome to the What's Your Weird Story podcast.
Everyone has at least one good story.
And some of us have stories that are just to the left of normal.
We're interested in the ones that push the boundaries of what we can perceive.
Stories that defy explanations.
Stories with an air of mystery.
Stories we might not share
for fear of being thought of differently.
But don't worry, we're all friends here. So, what's your weird story?
Hello, Weirdsville. I'm your host, Barry Johnston. Welcome to your next episode of the What's Your Weird Story podcast with me, my co-pilot, Mr. Adam Beebe.
Hey, Barry, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm pretty good. I've got a little coffee, which makes my life a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
We're in February. We got to get motivated.
We are.
You know?
Yeah, we've got Valentine's this week.
Oh my God!
If you're listening to, it's a good thing I mentioned.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good thing that the perpetually single man remembers the Valentine's Day, but
wow.
The man who's been married for almost 20 years.
Oh man! Well, this is a busy month, man, because the wife's got her birthday also, so it's like, bam, bam, bam.
That's
Christmas, New Year's, wife's birthday.
Valentine's, yeah.
Valentine's Day.
It's forgot it there again too.
Oh my God.
What are friends for, man?
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, you've been busy. You've got you've got this going on, of course, and you've got your family going on, of course, but you're also working on a secret project. Can I mention it? Can I tell the folks what it is?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Barry is starting help launch a I guess it's a micro brewing company, a brewing company.
Yeah,
what would you
that'd be proper. Craft brewing company.
Craft artisanal brewing company there in Enid, Oklahoma.
Yep.
And Barry's a brewmeister, and they just started getting that up and running this past week, right?
Yes.
To release the brewing.
Yes. That we're still got a little ways to go on the actual pub part. So it'll be we have the brewing in the back, and then you have a tasting room in the front. So you got taps in the front, and then you can actually watch us brew beer. Now, we may or may not be brewing when you're in there, but you can take tours of the facility also, which is pretty cool. This is something I've been working on. I've been brewing my own beer for, the past few years, and I have a good friend that he got into a business situation where it was possible to open a brewery, and I jumped in with both feet and said, I'd really love to help out. And so, yeah, we're really excited, man. We're going to have about 12 of our own beers on tap. We'll also serve wine, and we'll have sodas for kids. It's an all ages deal. You can bring the family in. So
cool. That
was really important to us. So, yeah.
I think you're going to have to create a signature beer, brew, and you're going to have to do two. You're going to have to do two. Okay. And I'm giving you the names for them. Firstly is Booze Brew.
Love it.
That's the first one.
That's going back. That's going way back.
That's a deep cut.
That is
what's a deeper cut? A deeper cut is pumpkin. When your sisters used to terrorize you, call you pumpkin. But
pumpkin ale.
Yeah, pumpkin. Oh, we got three. We got pumpkin ale. We got Booze Brew, and then what's your weird brew?
I love it.
Or something. We need something. Something. I'll work on that one.
Oh yeah, that's a done deal. But yeah, so we'll be open. We're hoping in March. We're hoping around St. Patty's Day that week. We're going to open. If you guys are ever in the Enid, Oklahoma area, come by Enid Brew Company. We're really excited, and we're really proud of what we've been doing, man.
Yeah, dude, you've been putting a lot of work in, and I know it's going to be exceptional because you do good work in whatever you touch, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, dude.
So talking about this week, what we got going on here, we brought our friend Desi back.
Yeah, Desi is back. You remember she had such a good time being a guest and being a fan and a friend of the show. She's been really out there proselytizing proselytizing, not prostituting us or herself. But she's been out there spreading the word, which, hey, please continue to do so, all of you. And she spread it so far that one of her good friends and a former housemate, Shannon, she turned him and his wife onto the show, and he contacted me independently and was like, hey, I've got a story. And then Desi had mentioned that, she had some family legends that she wanted to come back and share. Well, she did some digging. She came back. She's got 2. And it just so worked out perfectly that she and Shannon were able to tell their stories not only on the same day, but at the same place. So Shannon went over to her house. They did some grilling out. And they shared their stories with us.
Yeah, and they've both got really good stories. And Desi's got a couple of stories that are really kind of they have a foot in reality, and then a foot in something else that we can't really understand sometimes. And it's pretty interesting stuff, man. I can't wait to get to her stories. And then Shannon's story is just incredible. I mean, it's one of my favorite stories that we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, dude, it's great. It's great. Yeah, Desi's got some cool family legends kind of stories is what I would kind of categorize them as. They are really cool, and they spark some really great conversations. And then he's got a Bigfoot. He's got a Bigfoot story, and it's a cool one.
Yeah,
it's a really cool one. So let's get to it. Desi, thanks for coming back. Thanks for being a good friend of the show. And Desi, what's your weird story?
Guys, thank you for having me back. I know that you've been flooded with letters and phone calls to invite me back.
You've been literally flooded.
I mean,
yesterday you had pipes break. You were literally flooded. You were able. Your house was falling down. But you were here. You were able to get here with us, and I mean, it's been we've had some hiccups the past few weeks, but finally we got everything. It looked like everything was smooth sailing, and then all of a sudden your living room gets flooded. But
all is well. Everything's been handled. It could have been worse. We're all well here, so thank you for asking. And it is very nice to be back. I hope that the What's Your Word Storyland isn't disappointed in my first story, because it's not weird in the same kind of way that the other stories you guys have featured have been. But sorry if my dog barks. I think that
your dog seems to disagree with you.
Apologize
and think
about that.
It's going to be a good story. So we'll side with the dog there.
Well, in my life, I was never a mama's girl or a daddy's girl. I was a grandpa's girl. And my first story is really family lore, like a story that's been in our family for many years. And I saw my grandfather get choked up 3 times in my life. And the first time was when apparently I think somebody just was driving by out in the country and shot one of his favorite horses. And horrible deal.
Wow.
I'll never get that image out of my mind, seeing him at the end of the driveway, leaned against his truck with one hand in one pocket of his overalls and the other over his eyes. He was really upset about that. The second time I saw him get choked up, he was relaying to me the story of when his former boss was on his deathbed. He said it was a man he really respected, and he said some really meaningful things to him, and he got choked up telling me that.
Yeah.
The third time I saw him get choked up was when he told the story of Uncle Roy, and that's the story I want to share with you guys.
Great.
So my grandpa's name was Harold. His father was named Frank, and my great-grandpa Frank was one of 13 kids. It was a very large family. And he had a brother named Roy, so that would have been my grandpa's Uncle Roy. And Roy was married and had a couple of daughters, and during the Great Depression, he left to go find work and was never heard from again for years and years. And everybody just assumed, well, Roy skipped town. He's abandoned his family. Forget about Roy. And I don't know how many, it may have been 20 years later, out of the blue, my great-grandpa Frank gets a phone call from some hospital in Kansas. Hey, we've got your brother Roy here. You need to come get him. Out of the blue. It was the first thing anybody had heard of Roy in years. So go and get Uncle Roy.
Wow.
And Uncle Roy's story goes as follows. He leaves town to find work and is in a terrible car wreck. The car has caught on fire. He wakes up in a hospital, has no idea who he is, doesn't remember anything, has been really injured from this horrific car accident. I mean, imagine cars during the Great Depression. You know, it's very easy to get hurt.
Yeah.
His wallet was partially burned and his ID was partially burned. And so, whereas originally it had said Roy Crosswhite, now it said Roy Cross. Part of it, his last name burned off. So he started a new life as Roy Cross in Missouri, gets married, has a couple kids, and has his life. Fast forward however many years, he is working, like digging a ditch or something, and he falls and hits his head on a pipe. And again, wakes up in a hospital and looks around, and there's a woman sitting there, and he says, well, who are you? Well, I'm your wife. You're not my wife. And he gets frustrated, and somebody called Frank Crosswhite in Hennessy, Oklahoma.
What?
It was when they called my great-grandpa Frank. Now, this caused a huge division in the family because his original wife and children never believed him and did not accept him back in. Half the family believed him, and half of the family didn't. So my grandpa always believed his Uncle Roy and really was upset, was really upset by the big family division. It was a really big deal in our family for many years, apparently. It was long before my time, but it's something I always grew up hearing about. And so we'll never know the truth if Uncle Roy was full of shit, because my grandpa believed it, but his own wife, my grandma Dorothy, she didn't believe him. She thought Roy was full of it. So even she broke with my grandpa on what she thought really happened. But I mean, if it's true, that's a really crazy thing that brain injury, brain damage can do.
Yeah, head injuries, man, will fuck you up.
Head injuries are one of those things where they're still trying to figure out what happens there. Because people have head injuries and they become like incredible mathematicians or can speak different languages or, because that is just something that you don't hear very much about, the amnesia thing. Like that is, wow.
That's it. It's what it is. It's a soap opera trope. That's in every soap opera everywhere, in old movies and stuff like that, old TV shows. But it happens because it happened in real life. It happens in those stories because it's happened in real life somewhere along the line. And honestly, like, to me, I just hearing the story, I would think that it may have actually did happen, because if you are, say, 20, 30 years down the line after waking up after, why would you automatically switch it up and say, I don't know who you are, this is my call my brother. Because I remember that. I tend
to agree with that. Yeah, I didn't understand, why would he suddenly decide to have a hospital call Grandpa Frank? I mean, and I don't know, I've always been fascinated by that story.
Did he assimilate back into the family, or did he keep his old family? Like, how did that? Do you know how that all worked?
How did that play out? Because
I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I know his first wife and daughter never wouldn't speak to him. They didn't want anything to do with him because they just flat out didn't believe it.
Okay.
And I don't know if he went back to Missouri. I'm not sure if he went back and finished life with his second wife. That's a really good question, something I hadn't asked. But I know a lot of the family wanted nothing to do with him, and then people like my grandpa wanted him back. So, not sure.
I think too, people think about the Great Depression. My grandfather was a child during the Great Depression, and they were very feast or famine times, man. You didn't have, if you had a little bit of something, it got distributed throughout the entire family. People were going off far and away to look for work and look for jobs, and we didn't have communication like we do now.
Especially in the Oklahoma area, because right before the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl hit, and so people were leaving Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas in that area to find jobs anywhere they could, and that's where we get Okies, because that was a pejorative term for people from our area, because there were country people and they weren't entirely educated too well, and and they were leaving to go out to like the California, or other places to find work. Right. So, I mean to me, the entire story is completely plausible, and I honestly, I love it, and I think it absolutely belongs here.
Well, thank you. I was really hesitant about that because it's not the same kind of weird, but I've always loved it and wanted to share it. So thanks.
Weird's a broad term.
Yeah.
And that's what we did purposely when we started off. We knew that the majority of our story is going to be like supernatural and stuff like that, but. And you'll hear in upcoming episodes some other type of weird stories that have been shared, and so we want it to be a broad brushstroke.
Nice.
And so this is cool. We want it. I was waiting for some kind of a family secret story kind of a thing. So,
well, the next story is like that too. So maybe you'll like that too. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and get right into the other one. Also has to do with my grandpa Harold. When my uncle, my mom's older brother, also named Frank, when he was about 4 years old, and this story, before I launch into it, this is another story I've heard my whole life, and I don't know what made me randomly think of it a couple weeks ago, but I thought, oh my God, I got to call Barry and Adam and tell them the story because it's a really neat story. And I called my grandma. Hey, tell me that story one more time, because it'd been a few years since I'd heard it. And boy, she launched right into it. No detail has ever changed, except this time she gave me some names. So that made it a little better. So,
before we get into this, Barry, Desi she texted me and she was like, oh my God, I got a story for you. And it's like, and she was asking about this, that, and the other. I'm like, I don't know. But I was like, but this is really, it's like, so what, because when she was leaving it fairly vague. And I'm like, I'm not sure which way this is going. So give me just a tiny bit more of information. And fortunately, it didn't go the dark way I was thinking it was. It went a whole other direction. That's really cool. And I don't know the whole story, so I'm really eager to hear this.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, back when my mom's older brother was 4 years old, I don't think my mom was even born yet. My grandma told me my Uncle Frankie's, one of his hands was totally covered in warts. Mm-hmm. Totally covered. You could not touch a place on the back of his hand without touching a wart. Uh-huh. And even though he was only 4 years old, he was already pretty self-conscious about it. And he always kept his hands down in his pockets because he didn't want people to see. And he was a very shy and timid, quiet child anyway. Sure. So one day, a farmer nearby that was good friends with my grandparents, who were also farmers, he sent his hand over to borrow something for the tractor. And that man's name was Mr. Snow.
Now we
farm hand. Because this is what's your weird story, and someone sending a hand over that might pop up.
I didn't think about that. You're right.
Yeah. So workers in this part of the world can be also known as hands. Hand. Yeah. You're a good hand is what we would say. Yes.
Pardon me, with Storyland. He sent his worker over, his hired hand.
Yep.
And that man's name was Mr. Snow. And Mr. Snow comes over, and Grandpa and my two uncles, who were like 4 and 6 years old, go running along behind him. He goes out to greet Mr. Snow. And Uncle Frankie has let his guard down a little, and his hands are out of his pockets. And Mr. Snow sees that he's got warts all over his hand. And he said, hey, come here, son. Let me see your hand. He looks it over, and Frankie, reluctantly, all right, hands, puts his hand out there. And so Mr. Snow counts the warts. He touches all of them all over. And then he says, okay, they're going to go away now. Whatever, he didn't give it much thought, and they do their business, and Mr. Snow leaves, and nobody thinks anything of it. So 2 or 3 weeks later, Mr. Snow returns to return the plow or whatever it was he had borrowed, and brings it back. And calls Frankie over. Hey, let me see your hand. Well, the warts, of course, were still there. And he says, I must have missed one. And he counted them again. And then he left. Well, they forgot about it again. So Grandma's telling me 2 or 3 days later, she's up first thing in the morning making breakfast. And Frankie comes running out of the bedroom. They're gone, Mama. They're gone. They're all gone. What are you talking about? They're gone, Mama. Holds his hand up. And you could not even tell that there were ever warts on his hand. His hand was completely clear.
Whoa. Totally
gone.
Yeah, that's...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've always been fascinated by that. So I said, Grandma, that's really amazing. Like, had you heard stories? Like, were there rumors floating around the farming community, that Charlie O'Hearn's ranch hand could heal, like you would think there would be stories floating around. And she had never heard anything about it, never heard anything again. So a couple of Sundays ago, when I first had to cancel on you guys, sorry about that. I had to go to a nephew's birthday party, but I'm glad that I did, because when I was there, I was telling my aunt, I'm going to share this story. And she says, that man's name, because Grandma could only remember that he was Mr. Snow. She couldn't remember his name. And my aunt and I were talking about it, and she says, his great-grandson is a couple of my grandkids' stepdad. So she knows the great-grandson of this man that did that, and had talked to him and his father, who was the grandson of that man, to kind of ask him about it. And his name was Henry Louis Snow, and I think they called him Lou Snow. But there were stories in that family that he could heal warts. Because I was like, God, what else could he heal? What else could this man do? How did he figure out he had that power? When did he first? Yeah. I would love to talk to that man. Of course, he's long dead. But there were stories in the family that he could do that. But it was just warts. But still, that's pretty cool.
That is amazing. And what time period is that about? Do you know?
This would have been the 50s.
The 50s.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Back in the 50s, out between Hennessy and Dover, out on a farm.
Right. Wow, man.
So I have. It's a fascinating story, and it's just like, wow. And it reminded me of when I was living in the South. This guy I knew told me about this tradition that they have down there that I'd never heard of. But it reminded me of it because it's similar. But what they have is called, they call it talking the fire out. So if somebody is burned, there are people who have this skill. And it's passed down like from person to person. It's usually in a family, but it's passed down person to person. And this guy was telling me about this great aunt that he had, but they have the skill to go to somebody and they it's like a prayer or something, but they talk the pain out of the burn, and the burn, especially the burn heals either without blistering.
Interesting.
And this is something, and I was like, well, okay, I want to make sure I was right about all that. So I looked it up and I did some little research on it. And that's the thing is it's there. It's a Southern region thing. Apparently it's been around for just ever. And and I'd never heard anything of it, but that's what it is. And it was it also kind of reminded me because he said, he described it as I don't know. I guess the talking it out part is maybe it was talking in tongues, or it was speaking whenever Harry Potter talks the snake talk, where so it's this other kind. It's almost like a language or something of its own. But regardless of what it is that they're saying, the pain is drawn out, and the burn goes down, and it doesn't blister, and apparently, on minor burns especially, works really well. On right now, if you were all covered over in your body was 3/4 covered in burns or whatever, that wouldn't work. But for the small burns like that, it would work like that. And that's your story reminded me of that. And it's just these are these traditions that we had and that we believed in forever, and that, we've kind of like, maybe they worked, maybe they didn't. Maybe it was the power of the mind that worked, but they worked somehow. Or there's reports of them working, but we've kind of gotten past that because we've gotten to a point where we have to understand everything has to make a logical sense, or what we frame as logical. Because there's a lot of things out there that people frame as logical that are completely nonsense. But we'll go into that.
That's another kind of podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to lose any potential listeners or anything with that. But we have to have we have to have frameworks and to get through life, and that seems to be a part of one that is like, I don't know. I guess this is not the contemporary mind framework.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's, I think that's the problem that we get into in today's society, is that we try to frame people from the past based around what our today's standard of logic is.
Yeah.
A long time ago, if you had issues, especially health-wise, you had to do everything possible in order to counteract some of these things. And they didn't understand that, like, medicine and the body and, those things kind of work together. So a lot of times they would implement spiritual things to counteract these things. And you find in a lot of cultures that when they would have these ailments and things, like just sort of like making them known, maybe puts you in the mindset to get your body on board, even though that they can't, like, maybe that's something that they couldn't come out and speak in a way to make people understand that that's what they were doing. That is what they were doing. They were focusing the mind and trying to put the mind and the body and the spirit on the same level, so that they can turn the corner here on this stuff. I mean, you're talking about a time when, even the 1950s, we don't understand a lot of what we understand now.
Right.
What we think that we understand.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that, like, the further along modern man goes, and we start thinking that we are smarter than our ancestors, we got to kind of step off the high horse a little bit here, man. And,
totally.
And you know what I mean? Because once you stop living off the land, which I'm fortunate that we live in this part of the world that we live in, because we still have a lot, the farming community, that is a very just salt of the earth type of people. When you're living is based off of the outside, is based upon whatever God deems us to have in a particular year. It changes your worldview. It does. I've lived in big cities, and I've lived in the middle of nowhere, and it's two completely different frames of reference. So,
right.
Absolutely.
It's just one of those things. I don't discount any of that kind of stuff, because that's the way we grew up. We grew up spiritually sort of aware,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Desi.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys.
Those are awesome.
I'm glad you enjoyed them. I've always enjoyed hearing those stories as you grow up, and I took them for granted as a kid. And now that I'm an adult, I'm like, wait a minute, tell me that again.
Yeah, it makes me regret that it seems in my recollection that the BBs, man, we were just good people but boring. So no scandals. If they're all hidden. Maybe it's
they're hidden. Every family's got scandals.
Away from your childish ears,
for sure,
because you weren't old enough to hear it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. The stories you grew up hearing, that they only allowed you to hear so many of the details.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, did I ever get the whole story there, or is there more that
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
I wanted to let you guys know that it looks like Shannon has arrived. Shall I bring him on in?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's bring him in.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go grab him.
Yeah.
Gary, what do you think that people find the most far-fetched? Ghost stories or aliens as being the more unbelievable?
I would say aliens.
You know, I would agree with that probably too, because I think with ghost, there's a part of the belief system that is abound throughout the world, and we want to have some kind of assurance of some form of life after death.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with aliens, it's unknown for sure. It's completely unknown. We have only our imagination. We don't have a lot of universal stories that we agree upon that these things exist, maybe.
To believe in aliens is to believe that we are not the sole existence of this world, which goes against a lot of belief systems.
It definitely does. But you know, the great thing about what we're doing here is we are open to all your stories about ghosts or aliens or anything in between or anything outside of. We're not here to judge. We're here to just talk and to share. And we don't want you to think you're crazy, because you're not. And the girl, the babysitter girl, she picked up the phone, and there was a policeman on the other side, and he said, "We've tracked the phone call, and it's coming from inside the house."
Whoa.
Yeah, dude.
I love those urban legend stories.
Dude, I do too. And you remember the one where the girl, it's always the babysitter or it's the kids making out in Lover's Lane, but there's the one where the girl comes up and she finds the kids are watching TV and she turns them around and their face has SpaghettiOs.
Oh, man. Or the Hook guy. Remember the Hook guy?
The hook was hanging from the rear view mirror. Yeah. So if you got a story that is similar to any of those awesome urban legends, we want to hear it. Because, you know, those urban legends, man, they started off as somebody's true life weird story. It's got to be true somewhere. So, Tessie, once again, so your friend Shannon, he's going to tell us a story. What you were saying, you described this as... this is how you sold me on him. So tell us what you said in your email.
It needs to be known that he is a bullshitter. He will look you in the eye and tell you something that seems completely plausible and believable, and he made it up on the spot. And all of our friends, you know, we'd be like, Shannon, really? You know, like we get frustrated sometimes. What is the deal? So, you know, the What's Your Word Storyland needs to be aware that this guy is often full of shit, and he's really good at it. But the story that he's going to share, I have known Shannon since the 90s. You know, we were roommates for several years. He is a brother to me. We are family. The story he's going to share, he has been telling for years. He swears it's true, because when he bullshits, he'll eventually let you know it's bullshit. But this story he has always maintained is true, and it has never changed. His demeanor changes when he tells it. And I had the pleasure of meeting somebody that was there that experienced it, who was visibly bothered by even thinking about that story and remembering it, that corroborated everything. So when his story comes along, it's a pretty good one, and it is true. Yes. So, but you guys, like I said, you should know he is full of shit, but not this time. Not this time.
That's gonna be a lot of fun. I don't know if you knew this about me or not, but I've been known to you know, twist a tail every once in a while for my own personal enjoyment. Although I do, whenever I make up a story, you know, and Hubbard and I used to do this a lot, like in high school and in college. But I will quickly point out to people that I am just, whenever I get to that peak of unbelievableness, I will let them know that it's completely made up and it's not true. Although I have carried out some stories for a while, just because they're so enjoyable, because it's like one person is, I don't want to say gullible, but one person just buys into it so much that it's almost like if you tell them the truth about that, that's going to be a letdown.
Yeah, you let them down. Yeah.
Right, you know. And like a perfect example of this would be whenever I was in my my band,
Do you love being able to say that? Back when I was in my band.
Yeah. Especially
when we were on tour, man.
Yeah, especially back when. Well, the fact that my band is now a fairly recognizable band in some scenes. Some people. I mean, they were. We were Art Lord. Now they're Future Islands. They were on Letterman. They've been on. They're big. They're kind of big.
Oh, that's
one of David Letterman's most favorite acts. Yes.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
I'm serious. Yeah, and so so we were there together, and my buddy. Before this happened, it's like, I'm not a musician. I'm an artist, but I'm not a musician. I never knew really how to play anything. I knew how to play our songs, kind of. But before this, my buddy and I would hang out on the weekends, and we would just record a bunch of weird, noisy music and stuff just for fun. Think Ween. Think 1990s Ween, right? Big influence on us.
Yeah.
And early weird Flaming Lips type stuff. So we would record that, and when I worked at the record store, I would William would come in. I think William will be okay with me using his name. But William, when he first came in, he was asking me. He was like, he loved Flaming Lips. He liked all this stuff, and he was like, "What else is like this that's cool that I don't know about?" And so I pointed him to my bands, my fake bands, Ruin Your Stereo, to our CD, and we had a story behind it that was just between me and my buddy Chris about how we were big. We had toured Europe, and we got banned from Belgium, and then all this other stuff. And I told William this stuff just as a joke, and just and he was laughing. It was funny, but he was like, yeah, he got really excited about it. And because of that, when he and Sam, or the lead singer, decided to start a band, they asked me to join a band because they thought I had this other experience, before. And I said, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll join in. Sure. Of course. And I was a lot older than them. So they thought that I was like this cool, experienced guy, which I was, still am. But there was an extra layer of myth to it that was myth and not truth. But anyway, so Sam and Garrett, the other guys, those are the other guys in my band, they quickly figure out that this whole story was not true. But William's buying into it, and he's believing it, and he keeps asking me stuff, and I keep making up stuff, and just to drag him along because Sam and Garrett are just loving it, man. So anyway, it gets to the point to where William's like, "Dude, give me Chris's number. I'm going to call Chris, and I'm going to ask him." And I'm like, "Okay." So I gave him Chris's number, and this is back before we did texting a lot. So he called my buddy Chris and asked him all these questions. And Chris totally, he knew the story because we made it up together. He knew it all. Gave him everything he wanted and all of that. And so, basically, for almost 2 years, I had William convinced that all this stuff was real, and everybody around was just
so much entertainment.
Yeah. So much entertainment. And this kind of became our running thing, But anyway, eventually, I fessed up eventually. And he was, I do it. It was great. And if you know William, it's a lot funnier. So anyway, I digress. I've been known to bullshit and get away with it. But I always tell people that I bullshit. So
yeah.
I get around to it anyway.
Hey, also,
I'm looking forward to that story.
Speaking of bullshit stories in Ween, didn't Ween do something for Pizza Hut where they paid them a ridiculous amount of money to come up with an ad for them, a jingle, and it was about cheese inside the crust, and so they gave him a $1.5 million or something ridiculous, and the ad was when they wrote the song. They sent them the song, and it was just them going, "Yo, where the fuck the cheese go at? Yo, where the fuck the cheese go at?"
Oh my god!
Did you ever hear that? Did you ever hear that song?
I hope it's true.
Wow.
I hope it's true.
Oh, it's hilarious.
That's amazing.
Those guys are great.
Oh man. So Shannon, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
We're looking forward on. Desi has hyped you up. We are looking forward to hearing your story. And so let's get to it. What's your weird story?
Okay. So this happened in a little place called Joy, Oklahoma, which is absolutely nothing there. It's a schoolhouse and a church, and the school's been since closed down. This was probably in, so maybe 83, 84. So I was, 12, somewhere in that area, 12, 13 years old. And we lived about half a mile straight east of Joy School, right off Highway 77, which was the main thoroughfare, years ago before I-35 came in. And we have some acreage there where one of my brothers still lives. And it's, I don't know if I can describe it right. So the school was down a little hill, like I say, about a half mile from our house. And at night, in the summertime or in the wintertime, whatever, we would go down there because there was playgrounds. We go down and swing, play on everything. And my best friend lived about, let's say, a quarter of a mile further away than I did. And there was no houses on this out in this land. So we had a house. He was, like I said, a quarter mile down the road, and then my cousin lived another quarter mile past him.
That's walking distance back.
Yeah, that's all walking.
Out there, that's walking distance for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a creek that runs behind our house, and there was a little pond there that was like halfway between my house and my buddy Del Rey's house, and it's 200 yards off the road that leads in front of our place. So one night, like I say, this was probably, 83, 84. I'm 11, 12, 13 years old, somewhere in that. Me and my buddy Del Rey and another friend of ours named Brad. So I'm the oldest one. Del Rey is a year or two younger than me, and then Brad was a year or two younger than him. We had walked down to Joy School. And this was in the fall, I'm going to say October, November, something like that, because the leaves were all off the trees. Mm-hmm. And that's going to come into effect here shortly. So we had walked down there. It's late at night. My folks were probably at my aunt's beer joint, which is further out in the country than that. Both my brothers were gone. I think my oldest brother was already in the Navy, so he was gone. And I don't remember where my middle brother was at. So we're walking down there. You're walking back up. And we've lived out here. Like I say, my family has lived in this area since there was an area there, 100 years on this same plot of land. And we're walking back through there. It's probably 12 o'clock, something like that. And we're just walking along talking, and we get past where I lived. And so we're somewhere in front of this little pond. And we hear this noise. Like it's really, really hard to describe. It was kind of like a boop kind of weird noise. That's a very strange noise. Mm-hmm. Like I say, I've lived out here. I basically grew up on this land. One of my brothers still lives there, as a matter of fact. But we hear this noise, and we all three look at each other. Like, what the shit was that? That's never heard anything like that before. And it's coming from behind the pond. So and I'd say it's 100 yards or so to the backside of it from the road. And then we hear something start running through the leaves, and very fast running through the leaves.
And this is nighttime, you said?
Yeah, it's not. It's midnight, 1 o'clock. So there's a very slim possibility that anybody was out there, because nobody lived out there. I mean, it's a very sparsely populated. There's nobody.
That it's fall and winter, was it overcast, or was it like a clear night? What was the visibility? It was
pretty clear. I mean, we didn't have flashlights or anything, and we were just walking down the road. There was a house light at our house and one at my buddy Del Rey's house. Mm-hmm. Just a light over the driveway, and that's pretty much it. But it was very well lit, so we could see plenty far. And we had put up a fence to keep hogs into our place. We have 10 acres there, and we built a fence all the way across the front of it. It was an 8-wire barbed wire fence, so it was a fairly tall fence. Mm-hmm. We built it so we could keep everything in and everything out. Dad said, I want to build it one time. We're done. Yeah. So we hear this thing make this noise, and then we hear it starting to run and continuously making this really loud boop kind of noise. And like I say, we're 12, 13 years old, but we had lived out here, and Del Rey lived there his whole life. And it just freaked us out. Mm. So we start running towards Del Rey's house. We can hear this thing running through the leaves. Well, it gets to the fence and never slows down. It just jumps the fence. Ooh. And I mean, I'm getting chill bumps from the listeners telling you all about this.
Yeah, I'm getting chill bumps from hearing you tell.
It gets worse. So we run, and if I remember right, the door was unlocked. to Delray's house. And I'm not a fast runner by any stretch of the imagination. Delray was a football player, real quick guy. I outrun him to the house. I hit the door. We get it open. We get inside the door, slam it shut, all three of us, lock it. As soon as we do, bam, this thing hits the door.
Whoa.
And the hair's standing up on my arms right now. And makes that noise again, that really loud, intense boop noise. And we're freaking out, because nothing like this has ever happened to any of us. Well, this house that we were in, it was probably let's say a 2,000 square foot house, just a long rectangle. And it had three doors. It had the front door, a kitchen door, which would have been towards the east, and the front door faced south. So the kitchen door in the east. And then on the north side, there was another door that went through a little patio thing. So whatever this thing was, it hit the front door, went around, hit the kitchen door, went around, hit the back door, and circled the house. Now, this thing circled the house like 4 times, hitting each door, and making that ungodly noise. So, like I say, we're out in the middle of the country. We're all very familiar with guns.
Are you just like shitting your pants right now?
Yes.
His hands are trembling as he tells the story now.
We loaded every gun in the house. We had a damn crossbow, for God's sake, loaded and pointed at the door.
Oh, my God.
This just scared the shit out of us. We're a 12, 13-year-old kid, This is something, and it's just making this noise, and it's going faster than we can run. It's circling the house that fast, but it's hitting hitting the door with all it can. Going to the next door, bam, hitting that one. And like I say, like 4 or 5 times this damn thing does that. And then we hear it run off. That's it.
Wow.
Never heard it. Nothing like that ever happened before. Whoa. Nothing like that happened again.
So let me ask you, like when you first saw or heard it, we
never saw it.
Okay, but when you heard it, you just immediately get the sensation that this thing is chasing us, and so you just start running? Was that what happened?
Because it was far away. Like I say, it was. Behind the pond is a creek.
Yeah.
Which we ran up and down the whole time we were growing up. So it was between the pond and the creek. And we could hear it getting closer.
Oh, I see. Wow.
So the noise was getting louder, and we could also hear it running through the leaves that were on the ground, because it's pretty wooded. Especially back then, we had a lot of pecan trees. So you could hear things rustling through that.
Man, dude.
It just
So we should say this also. So Shannon, you're where Joy is. That's kind of like Arbuckle wilderness area, right?
North Arbuckle Wilderness.
So it's very wooded, right? Some hills.
And there's nothing from the road that I lived on. If you go north out of there, there's nothing for 2 miles easily.
Right.
Not even another road going through there.
Wow, man.
How long did all of this go on? How long did it?
About a half hour. The whole thing. And like I said, we had every gun in the house loaded. I know we had a crossbow I don't know where the hell we got a crossbow, but we had it loaded and pointed at the door.
And at no time were you ever able to look outside to get a visual on the thing?
We never even got close to the window.
Wow.
It scared us so bad we were afraid to walk.
Wow.
There's no way that that's in the type of area that you're describing, and all of that. If this was a practical joke, there's no way it could be.
No,
because of the way it was carried, the way you described it being carried out, and it's not practical to do that kind of a thing.
No, so I've wondered about this too, because my brother and Delray's brother were kind of, they would pull shit on us all the time. They would try to, but like I say, they weren't even around. There was nobody at Delray's house. I don't think there was anybody at our house.
Can a person run and jump that fence?
No, neither one of those guys sure as hell couldn't.
That's what I was going to say. Like to clear a 7-8 foot tall fence
that takes speed and that takes strength and that takes a lot of agility.
Yeah.
And that's not something that most folks have. That's not even something that even a lot of athletes could easily do.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told this story, I don't know, a dozen or more times. I know Desi's heard it quite a few times, and I've told it throughout my life, but I honestly don't think me and Delray and Brad ever spoke about it again.
Really? What do you think it was? I mean, if you had to guess, what would you think it is?
So honestly, I think it was some kind of a Bigfoot. I really do. I was in McAllister, Oklahoma. No, not McAllister, Muskogee, working.
Okay.
And there was a squatcher over there, a guy that worked. I worked in a lot of AT&T central offices, so there was a guy with AT&T, and he asked me about it. How he found out about it, I have no idea. But he told me that in his experiences, the adults would drop their children off in an area and leave them over the wintertime for them to become better adept at fending for themselves.
Wow.
And they like to play with people. So they like to toy with you.
Whoa.
So this was the way he described it, is this is something that they do.
Wow.
That they'll try to, they think they're playing, but they're really tormenting these people.
Oh my God.
I love by the way, I love Desi's barely audible expressions just off of to the side there. This does that boop sound. I've heard something similar. People describe something similar in association with
Right.
Sasquatch type things. And for a creature to move that fast and be able to clear that kind of a height, does again sound like something that
Right.
could be attributed to a Bigfoot Sasquatch. Man, I wish our Bigfoot expert,
I wish Hubbard was
Jeff
here.
was here.
No kidding.
So that
You can't trust him. I'll listen to his story, man. Anybody that gets fooled by a costume, I don't know.
Well, you know that you're not alone because, there have been a few people on that have talked about Bigfoot sightings, and honestly, I think we've said this before, but I never really realized how popular of a story that was in these parts, this part of the world. I mean, it's, the Bigfoot sightings out by El Reno.
Yeah.
I mean, there's quite a few of those. So
I went to college with a bunch of Apache Indians. I went to college in Chickasha at USAO. Well, they were all in the Bangor area, and they all had stories.
Oh.
Every one of them. Like my buddy Mike, he would tell me stories that his grandfather would tell him about playing with the children.
wow.
I mean, just insane.
Yeah. That's intense.
So you were treated to, you said your buddy's house, Delray's house, yeah?
Yeah.
When his parents got home.
We never talked about it.
Really?
No.
Just, this is...
Like I say, we've lost touch over the years. I saw him at his dad's funeral a few years ago. But before that, after high school, I went my way, he went his way. And I really don't think we ever spoke about it again, to tell you the truth.
I would love to hear his version of, and whoever else is just,
Yeah.
I'd love to sit you all down or independently to hear the version, and then see you guys down together to talk about it, and see what kind of recovered memories that would, pull up.
Yeah.
When you're all three there, and be like, oh, I forgot about the crossbow or whatever, all that stuff.
Well, I know I talked to my dad about it, who grew up on the same land, and actually we were out on if you drive down I-35, there's an exit just south of Wynnewood exit called Ruby Road.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I had a real good friend. Her name was Lana that lived out there. She had I want to say 300 acres, just literally in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her about it, and her answer was, I think it was a vampire.
Huh.
But she had just random weird things happen out there on her land all the time. And she could never find anything. And like I say, she lived out in the country, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, it's just nobody that I've ever talked to about this has anything near, this thing hitting the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's weird. Yeah, that's what's weird is that it chased you, man. That's something that you don't hear very often. We did have a guy on tell a story. Maybe not that it was chasing him, but it was certainly making its presence known by circling the area.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe in that little creek area down behind the house down there, behind the pond, same kind of thing. Me and Del Rey are down there on a 3-wheeler. Same time frame. Mm-hmm. And we got chased by a panther. I don't know if you've heard one scream. Big cats do actually run through that area down there.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, weird things happen down there.
Right.
But yeah, we heard it scream. We could hear it running through the creek. And
Well,
it
a cat
screamed
would
at us like 2 or 3 times.
a cat would catch you, no doubt
Oh, it
about
would
it.
have caught us easily.
Yeah, yeah.
But it would have been able to,
Yeah,
jump the fence, no problem.
right.
But it was a completely different noise than
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah, no, that's one thing I was going to say. The noise, you would know the difference of the gate.
Oh, yeah.
That because you got 4
Yeah.
feet hitting instead of 2.
Yeah.
So also, the thing would have to have been, because a cat, like we say, a cat is hunting, and part of the fun is catching, of course. Well, if a creature is running after you, and it undoubtedly, if it can hurdle a fence like that, it's going to catch you. But to not catch you, and to sort of just lag behind enough for you to get inside and then, run around and do whatever it did around the house, it means that it knew what it was doing. It knew it was, was playing.
There was
or
intelligence there.
That's interesting. Golly, man. That's an intense damn story, dude.
Yeah, dude.
It still, like I say, this was well over 30 years ago when this happened, and it still gives me chill bumps.
Whew.
Man.
And like I say, my brother lives right there where this all happened now, and he's never said anything about anything like that ever happening.
Well, maybe he's scared to say anything to you, like you're
Hell,
saying.
he might be.
It could be. Desi said beforehand, when she was, telling us about you, hyping you up, and then also saying that you're the bullshitter. She said one thing that she said is that when you tell this story, your demeanor changes. And from when we were just hanging out and talking, getting to know each other a little bit before we started recording, she's 100% right. You're definitely you got, this is all business. This is all for real.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a big thing about being a sometimes bullshitter myself. I can tell whenever somebody's putting on the gloss, and then but this is not gloss. This is legit, and I can tell.
Yeah.
And so that's an amazing.
Whatever happened definitely happened to you.
Yeah,
definitely.
And like I say, I might even forgotten some stuff because this really has been so long ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've mentally blocked out parts of it.
Sure.
So who all was it? It was you and Del Rey
And another guy named Brad.
and another guy named Brad.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't seen Brad or talked to him in 20-something years either. So
You should. What would be really cool is if you reached out to them and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be on this podcast here in a few weeks, and
Take a
I'm going
listen.
to tell this story and listen to it, and then if you guys are interested, they would love to have you on to talk about it."
yeah.
But I'm also very curious, as you said, your friend Lana thought that it was a vampire. Why did she get to that
I
conclusion?
don't know. I have honestly no idea. Desi met Lana. Didn't you know her?
I don't know if I did. If I did, it was wrong.
She's passed on now.
Okay.
Quite a few years ago. But I don't know. We were out at her house, and I was telling her this story. Her and my dad, and I'm sure they had a few beers at this point. That's what they did, and that's just what she come up with. She's like, I hear random stuff out here all the time, and I described the noise. I told her the story just like I just told y'all, and she said there's definitely something else out here too.
Wow.
And she had the big cats come through her place too. Like I say, she raised cattle, and I was telling my wife this story earlier today. When cats will attack cattle, they'll drop out of trees on them sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and they'll just rake at them to and get them knocked down. Well, one of Lana's cattle, this happened to it, but the cow got away. So the next day, she called my dad, who was he had worked. Wasn't a veterinarian, but he raised cattle.
Yeah,
knew
he was a farmer. Yeah, he knows how to do that stuff.
Farmer rancher, he ranched, cowboyed for a while, to come out there and help her, help get this cow fixed. And the claw marks on the cow, my dad was about 6 foot or so, and his hands were bigger than mine, and he couldn't spread his hands out far enough to cover the claw marks. That's how big this thing was.
Wow.
So like I say, there's a lot of random stuff out there that we don't, you don't really hear about.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, man.
So yeah, it's just
Thank you, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing your weird story, dude.
That was great.
Maybe somebody else has got something similar to it with the same kind of noise. And
Yeah, well, the last guy we had on talked about the knocking noise, but it sounded like a throat, like a
Like
you know, like
the glodling is what he calls it.
Yeah. I listened to that one. I listened to about that. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, that sound that you described to me makes a lot of sense for primates, because they're like, if you like chimpanzees or you know stuff, you know, other similar great apes and primates will do that kind of hooping and type sounds, and people talk about Bigfoot hooping and whoop and stuff like that, and that's what it sounds like it could be to me. And
I've seen the show out down in southeastern Oklahoma, you know, where they have guys out there and take them on the hunts,
right?
And they make that kind of noise.
Yeah,
man,
that's crazy, dude. Wow,
weird stuff.
Great stuff, dude.
Dude, thanks again, man. That was fantastic.
Absolutely, I'm glad y'all enjoyed it.
And Desi, thank you for the commentary, and thank you for telling your stories, and
thanks for bringing us a guest, man. Thanks for bringing us another.
Well, her husband did entice me over with steak.
Yeah, he's cooking on the grill now while we do this. So
that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey Barry.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a goat sucker?
What?
Goat sucker, chupacabra.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever seen one of those?
I haven't seen one personally, but I've heard about them.
Yeah, me too. If anybody's got a goat sucking story, if you got a goat sucker story, we want to hear it. If you got a Bigfoot story, we want to hear it. If you got a Loch Ness Monster story, or a Lake Champlain story, or Ogo Pogo story, or an Oingo Boingo story. That was an 80s band. Anyway, you got a weird cryptid story, we want to hear it.
I didn't even know what a cryptid was, man.
Yeah, dude, cryptids. They're like the animals that haven't been necessarily proven by science. They're the ones on the edge. You know, they're not necessarily known animals, but they're known animals. We don't have the bodies or anything like that. So they're kind of like half myth, half story, based in reality, but still in that weird mystery area that we don't know about yet. Cryptids are fun.
Wow, that was just a couple of great stories, and I mean, we appreciate Desi coming back and offering, you know, a couple of more cool stories, man.
Yeah, and new territory, which is always cool to add to the map of Weirdsville. You know, she was hesitant. She was like, I don't know if these will be really weird enough or whatever. But, you know, it's just like, hey, man, we just want to hear. It's a good story. We want to hear a good story. You know, we want to hear weird stories. We want to hear unusual stories. But, you know, hey, even, you know, if you even got a good story, you know, just an awesome, epic story, we want to hear that too. We'll talk to us. We'll record it. Maybe we'll figure out something to do with it.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
You know, we got stuff coming. So, yeah, you know, any amazing, awesome, funny, whatever, true, as long as it's true, as long as it happened to you or a family member, you know, go ahead and get a hold of us. You know, we want to keep this going, and we got other things that we're planning on doing. So just bring us your stories, you know?
Yeah. You never know. You never know where it's going to fit. But man, the amnesia story is like, I think the coolest thing about that is I don't know anybody directly that's ever had something like that happen. Mm-hmm. So, you know, knowing that we have a friend that has had that happen to them is just so freaking weird, man. You know? It's
great though, you know, because it's like, that trope, you know, that soap opera.
Yeah.
That soap opera trope exists because somebody had amnesia. Right. Somebody got it somehow.
Yeah.
You know, and you take a hit to the noggin and weird things happen, man, you know?
Yeah, and then the time that it happened in is just you know, like we said in the podcast, you know, we didn't have the technology that we have now.
Yeah.
If you're some dude laid out in the road somewhere, nobody knows who you are. You don't know who you are. When you come to, you're just it's whoever you want to be, basically.
Yeah.
And
now I had some nights in college like that, but I quickly got over.
Yeah.
So, but I digress.
Well,
those.
I can absolutely understand that. But yeah, so I mean that was awesome. Of course, her other story about the warts was just a weird story, man. I mean,
yeah, and it just one of those cool folklore kind of things that, again, it's got to be based in reality.
Yeah,
it comes from somethhere where it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it reminded me of when the people do the fire, talking the fire out of a burn, and the burn out of that's just amazing stuff, dude.
Yeah. But dude, the Bigfoot story that Shannon had was, I mean, it's so different than what we've heard because the encounter itself was just so intense that it really sheds a different light on the possibilities of what Bigfoot can do.
Yeah.
Not only physically, but just like torment the mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and again, Shannon's convinced it was a Bigfoot, but he didn't get clearly see what it was,
Yeah, could have been.
And one of the lady, the woman, the friend of his dad's friend, his friend thought it was a vampire, which is very unusual. But then again, I mean, who knows? Yeah. We don't know everything. I tend to think that it seem like the behavior of some kind of a Bigfoot or other kind of aggressive creature like that. I don't know about vampires. I don't know many people. I mean, it seems to be that vampires are pretty established as something of folklore.
Right.
That, and we've got good explanations for where those legends come from.
Right.
Again, it could have been something that did exist that we just have overwritten with, explanation. Right. If that makes any sense.
It's like, with all these stories, it's like regardless of what it is or your perception of what it is, it was something, and it was something that happened to him, and it's kind of like whatever it was. It's kind of like whatever. I mean, that's not to me is not the biggest part of the deal. It's just the experience of being chased by something, and it's just crazy that people, they have these experiences, and like we talked about before, and they don't talk to the friend that was with them that night. It's like, I think they're both so freaked out. They're afraid to admit that, like, dude, we were part of something really, really strange and incredible that we can't even believe it ourselves,
And they didn't say anything to their parents about it either, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, if something like that would have happened, I would have said something to my dad for sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Because that was just such a weird kind of a thing. But, hey, and like you were saying, we're not here, we're not here to prove anything, or we're not here to investigate anything. We're here to just listen to some good stories, some awesome stories. So, I mean, if it's Bigfoot, it's Bigfoot. If that's what he believes it, then I believe it too.
Right. Well, we appreciate them coming by and sharing their stories with us. And we want to encourage you guys to please get in touch with us, man. Share your weird stories, man. I mean, even if they may not be weird to you, if you think they might be weird, they're probably weird. And just reach out to us.
Yeah, they're going to be weird to somebody for sure.
Right.
And and you can reach out to us in so many ways. We've got our Facebook page. It's What's Your Weird Story podcast there on Facebook. Feel free to follow and join us, on it. We've got the we always forget about this, but we have the hotline. We have the Weirdsville hotline.
Yep.
Area code 513-909-9821. We set that up before we even started putting the show out on the internet, and we completely we always forget about it.
Yeah.
So somebody call.
Yeah, call. Leave us a message. Tell us a story. Ask us questions.
Yeah, it'd be great. We're on the Twitter, which is What's Your Weird, and it's all YER. You guys know that for now, for the most part, but just in case you're a newer listener, thank you for joining us. But we're also on the Instagram, and I'm definitely, I do the social media stuff. Definitely more active on Instagram being an artist, being a visual artist person, that's my jam. That's what I enjoy doing.
And by the way, I mean, we should talk about the fact that you do all the artwork, and you do an amazing job, man. I mean, it just is incredible. The amount of stuff that you're able to put out in a blink of an eye. It's incredible, dude. So
thanks, man.
Thank you for all that you do for that, man. It's awesome. We're lucky to have you.
Yeah, well, you I guess I make us look good, but on the bigger part, see that this is a audio medium, you make it sound good, and that's what's more important.
We're just lucky they don't have to look at us.
That's true. That's true. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's been another fun episode. Thanks for our guests coming on, Desi and Shannon, and telling them great stories and laughing with us. Thanks for listening to all our banter. And we appreciate you guys. Keep listening, keep downloading, leave us some reviews on the iTunes or wherever you can on a bathroom wall. That's cool, too. Spread the word. But thanks again, and we're going to wrap it up. But just remember you yourself to be safe.
Be weird.
As always, if you have a weird story, we want to hear it.
If you have a lot of them, we want to hear them all.
We can't do this podcast without your invaluable contributions.
Whether it's sharing your stories,
listening,
rating,
and spreading the word about the podcast. Thanks for listening. Till next time, be safe.
Be weird.
The stories presented on the What's Your Weird Story podcast are, to our knowledge, true experiences that our guests have had. We can't take the time to research all claims made, and besides,